And with that, I would like to welcome you to this event organized on behalf of the Dutch Ministry of the Interior and Kingdom Relations and the Urban Intergroup in the European Parliament. This is a Zoom webinar, which is also broadcasted on Facebook live stream. I would like to welcome all the panelists and the speakers, and very specifically, I would like to thank the Dutch Urban Envoy, Karen van Danzig, and her team, as well as the European Intergroup, represented by its president, although via a video message. And the president is Jan Olbricht, who is also represented by the new vice president of the Urban Group in the European Parliament, Madame Fabienne Keller, and the Dutch Ministry of the Interior and the Urban Intergroup are the co-organizers of this event. It goes without saying that we would have preferred to have this meeting as a real physical event. Well, let's not spend any more words on that. We're used to video events, of course. It would have been very nice to see you in person, but it is the best thing we could do in these times of Corona. The event is an official event, side event of the European Weeks of Regions and Cities, and also contributes to its objectives, which is empowering citizens, cohesion and cooperation, and Green Europe. Well, obviously, the urban agenda ticks all the boxes of this big event. The urban agenda is a turning point, and so are also the partnerships in the urban agenda. And in order to learn from its achievements and to translate them into potential action for the post-2020 urban agenda, we want to focus on the concrete results of the partnerships, on its key messages, the multi-level method in light of key European development and frameworks. So let me start with a few general announcements before giving the floor to our official host, co-host. We are very grateful for having such a wonderful panel with different governmental levels represented and different institutions, all with a unique perspective on the urban agenda. I will introduce them after a few words of welcome by Karen van Danzig. We are equally grateful to have several representatives of the different partnerships of the urban agenda, and also one colleague of Eurocities who participate in, which as an organization of cities participate in many of the partnerships. In the physical setting that we originally planned, they would have been part of the audience, but we find some technical novelties to give them also the floor, and you will see how we will play a bit with the different possibilities that this Zoom webinar offers us. We will actually have 3 different panel rounds, each with their own theme and their own speakers. That means we will have people who will be invited to the stage and leaving the stage during these 3 rounds. This might be a bit confusing, but actually this movement and this dynamics is on purpose. So you can choose your different settings like speaker view in Zoom to focus on the speaker who is actually having the floor. We also try to build in some interactivity in this meeting. For instance, one of the possibilities is the Q&A function in Zoom. So I would really invite all the attendees of this Zoom webinar to use the Q&A function. You can actually vote for questions, you can upvote questions, and we'll have a close look at what is entered in the Q&A box. You can also use the chat function for general chat to exchange messages. And with that, and seeing also that Fabienne Keller is also connected, so hello Fabienne Keller, I will shortly introduce after the official word of welcome by Karen van Danzig, the Dutch Urban Envoy, I will introduce all the panelists. But first, I would like to give the floor to Karen to say her word of welcome. So Karen, please, the floor is yours. Unmute yourself and
yes, I will unmute myself first. Well, thank you very much. It's been an honor actually to open after Mart in this case and host this event together with the European Parliament, as in Jan and Fabienne of the Urban Intergroup. And I must also welcome everybody that's joining, all the attendees, the panelists, but also the viewers on live stream, I hope. the purpose, actually, I think when I started in January, the idea came that we wanted to put the partnerships in the spotlight. That is the sole purpose, actually, pretty much the sole purpose of this event. We want to put you in the spotlight, and we want to increase the visibility of the present partnerships and the partnership method. I think we have, I don't know how many attendees we have, but I was hoping, I heard that the registration was 100, so I think that's was our maximum. As Mart explained, we'll do 3 panels: better regulation, Green Deal, and multi-level partnerships. And I hope to come up with a lot of input so I can take that with me into further interventions, for example, in the DGUM or other moments with the trio presidencies. So I think that's very short. I think I have a little bit longer presentation, but this is, I think, for now. Mart, I give the floor back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen. Well, what I said already, this meeting is co-hosted by the Urban Intergroup, now in person represented by Fabienne Keller, who is its new vice chair. But we also have a video message by Jan Olbricht, who is the actual chair of the Urban Intergroup. And I would like to start with the video that.
Mart, can I do my presentation first then? If
you prefer to do it first? Okay.
Yeah, yes. So I think that would be handy. Yeah, because I will give a nice overview of everything.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Let's see. I think this is the last slide. Yes, there we are. Well, to start with the why, I just wanted to recap actually the situation, the tour, the horizon actually from Amsterdam to Ljubljana, because that is actually for me also the end point of where the urban agenda will be, actually the urban agenda post 2020 will be established. So why did we actually start with the urban agenda? Well, the urban agenda, I think 70 to 80%, actually more than 80%, will be living in cities in Europe in 2050. Cities and urban areas are the social economic powerhouses. They generate 80% of growth and are places of innovation and crucial to delivering the transitions, where also the Commission has talking about climate, energy, digital, green, and solutions for social challenges. Cities are also the closest link between the EU and its citizens. In the cities, everything comes together. If you look at what COVID has acted as a magnifying glass, both on opportunities and on challenges. The importance of cities and partnerships is as topical as ever. So the purpose of Urban Agenda in 2016, when it started, was to bring EU closer to the citizens through the cities, to strengthen the urban dimension and the position of these cities, and to work together on issues on equal footing, the multi-level governance way, or experiment or innovation, sometimes it's called. How this happens is actually, I will focus on the partnerships. The core of the urban agenda is the partnerships and the 3 pillars. As mentioned in the slide, better regulation, better funding, and better knowledge. Well, around the partnership, a strong network of member states, regions, cities, European organizations, institutions, European parliaments, and other stakeholders and knowledge institutes are formed. They share and build on their knowledge, and then they come to recommendations on aspects of policy, regulation, and funding. And my role, which I started in January, I followed up on Nico Bates, is to actually, the same as he has, is to strengthen the position of cities and the urban areas. And in this case, to make sure that in the tradition and the spirit of the urban agenda is continued. Next slide, please. As I said, the partnerships are the core of the urban agenda. Here you see 14 partnerships, and I think more than 200 parties within the EU are involved in these partnerships. There are 115 concrete actions on better regulation, better funding, and better knowledge. The urban agenda would not be the urban agenda without the partnerships. And I'm focusing on the partnerships. You have done the bulk of the work, often within your own time and within your own means. And I want to thank you for this. Next sheet. Well, where are we now? Like I said, the partnerships, I spent a moment on of the partnerships, on where are we now at the partnerships. In the next GGUM meeting, the last 2 partnerships will actually be presented, their action papers. I think that's wrong, like I mentioned, but action reports. And if you look at what is now going to happen, we have the assessment and we have achievements. Let me shortly spend a little time on achievements. Often when I started in January, everybody was telling me, what has the urban agenda actually brought? What has it done? Why is it important? And I noticed that there's not a very, there are different stories on this. If I look, one of the main issues is always said the multi-level governance method or the multi-level partnership method. That is the success. That is the innovation. That strengthens the position of cities. If you look at the partnerships, then you see many actions on better knowledge, and a lot of these have been applied in cities and member states and have contributed to tackling challenges. I think this is also a very big achievement. You have best practices, guidelines, toolkits, roadmaps, and to mention some, the Talent Office of Jobs and Skills, the database and guidance paper on affordable housing, the training on circular and green procurement, and there's also guidelines on abandoned buildings and spaces, and a digital skills map, just to mention a few. I think the Bright tool, which will come up later in the Better Regulation, is also a nice product of the urban agenda. And it was very good to see that the partnership, which was one of the last 2 to start, has been mentioned in the European Security Union strategy. That is the partnership for public spaces. If you look at the digital side, then you see that the digital transition partnership has also led to the Talent Declaration and to the Joint Boost Sustain. And you see many, many partners included in the declaration. And air quality, if you look more on the green side, then you see that the partnership air quality has landed, or a couple of recommendations have landed in the Green Deal. And not to forget the European Migrant Advisory Board, which was very important at the start of the Dutch presidency and afterwards too. Well, I can give many, many more examples. I think the other important part of the urban agenda that has influenced the national policy. It has strengthened, for example, the Italian city network. It has strengthened the Spanish. I think the Basque has been strengthened through the urban agenda, and the creation of the Polish urban agenda. Well, so up to now, I've seen these are a couple of achievements. Now, if you look now, it has also been achieved. It's also been instrumental in something for the future. It has been instrumental in strengthening the urban dimension in the EU cohesion policy. You can see the negotiations now on the European Urban Initiative and earmarking of the ERDF, which have, I think, become to a trilogue compromise, which are looking quite good. And the information on the urban policy can be digitally found on European level. So these are some of the achievements which I want to put on the table. If you look at the assessment, so if we look at the assessment, then we also see what we have to do together. The assessment, I think one extra achievement, for the first time, we had an EU commissioner that has European the urban agenda and the sustainable urban development in her mission, which is quite an accomplishment. She, Ferreira, also presented the evaluation in January 2020. And there were quite a couple of recommendations in this to strengthen the urban agenda. Well, as I mentioned before, a couple of the topics that were mentioned in the assessment is the success of the multi-level governance, but also the strengthening position in cities. And it's also been seen, I think we should not forget, as a long-term project. It's not something we do in just 4 years. It should be something that should be continued and should be strengthened. The recommendations, and that's also something I will come back to later, is obviously the support of the implementation of the present actions, the broadening of the outreach, the commitment of the member states and the Commission, the strengthening of communication, process and governance, but also more integration in the institutional framework, as for example, within the Commission. And last but not least, we have to secure the finances. Well, time is now. A critical time path from Amsterdam through Leipzig with a new Leipzig Charter and implementation document onto Lisbon and Ljubljana, where the urban agenda will be established again. Well, as I said, it's coming along. And in the meantime, the partnerships have been able to have more joint and targeted support, which is good. We have seen developments on the Better Regulation initiative, but I must say we have to be vigilant. There are still some concrete nuts and bolts that need attention to get actually out of first gear and into the fifth, and to make sure that everybody is on board of this beautiful vehicle. Well, next sheet, please. Well, what needs attention and has my attention? Well, like I said, political commitment of member states and Commission and other parties should be constantly in our mind. This is something that I have tabled and has gotten attention. The high-level meeting did not make it, but we are hoping that the political commitment, it will still be on the table. As you know, 2020 is the year in which we upon agree with the new Leipzig Charter and the follow-up of the urban agenda that partnerships are the main reason to see and innovative for the EU-wide success of the urban agenda. Continuation of these partnerships and partnership method is one of my priority themes. Like I said, the present partnerships should be where possible and when one wants that should be continued. The implementation of actions and the increased visibility should be an issue. New partnerships, I hope somewhere next year we can start new partnerships, possibly strengthening the combination between different partnerships on combined themes, for example, or maybe new themes. And at the end of the day, I think the support for the old and new partnerships or all partnerships is very important. So furthermore, there are still lots of work to do, and we have to make the urban agenda stronger, concrete, and practical. Portugal and Slovenia will continue with this important work, and we need your continued input and support. So I would love to hear, and I hope that's what this afternoon will bring, more of your achievements, more of your ideas, more of your input and your concerns. Now, thank you for your attention, and I'll give the floor back to Mart and to the European Parliament.
Yeah, thank you very much, Karen. I think your ambition of making the urban agenda indeed stronger, more concrete and more practical is exactly what we all aim at. And this is also, let's say, the key message of Jan Olbrycht's address to this webinar. So with that, I would like to give the floor to Jan Olbrycht, who sends his apologies for not being able to attend in person this webinar, but actually he has sent us a very interesting recording that we're going to play now. So with
Thank
that,
you very much for your invitation for your very important conference today. Unfortunately, I cannot be personally, or what we very often say today, physically present during the conference, but I think we are now getting more and more used to be online and to be in the remote system. So I'm not, not just because I think that the system is better, but I just couldn't do it being in my country and being next on my way to Brussels. So I think that this meeting is very important for everybody who is on place, but also, and I would like to welcome also all the participants who are present through Zoom or YouTube. And they will, I think, actively participate in the whole debate. The subject is very important for us because this is about the urban agenda. Urban agenda yesterday and the urban agenda tomorrow. But we have to remember that we, as a urban intergroup, which is a cross-party gathering of the members of the parliament, existing for almost 15 years, from the very beginning, we were fighting for the urban dimension in European policies. And of course, we were trying our best to put it into different regulations, to make it stronger, to have a special funds for this. But very often the documents which have been prepared were much more a kind of programming documents or declarations. You remember the very famous documents like the Leipzig Charter, which, by the way, will have the new version very soon. But it's also the, for example, Toledo Declaration and the other documents. They underline the importance of urban dimension in European policies, but in fact, they were not operationalized immediately. We had to put the elements of this declaration into the European legislation. The situation changed with the urban agenda. I think that it's important now to underline the importance of Dutch presidency, because the Dutch presidency decided to change the approach, and not only to prepare another programming document or a kind of declaration, but to propose concrete solutions. So that's why you remember a very famous document, which was the Pact of Amsterdam. The Pact of Amsterdam, the strong elements of this was that it was signed by many governments, but in fact, what was the weak point was that it was not like mandatory or signed by everybody. It was based on the voluntary base, but still it was very important. And the Pact of Amsterdam was the base to prepare the urban agenda. The European urban agenda was and still is the document which proposed concrete actions. And when we look after several years, what is the achievements? What are the good sides and the weakness of the urban agenda? We can say that first of all, it was to put the urban dimension in European policies in a very high position. So it was something which was important, discussed among the member states, next approved by many of them, and next, of course, implemented. This is first. The second element was that it introduced a kind of new formula concerning the multi-level governance. Multi-level governance, which very often was very wrongly interpreted as the practical implementation of subsidiarity. It means everybody has its own job to be done and everybody has his own competences. No, the multi-level governance is exactly the opposite, is how to do the things together. So the urban agenda, the proposal of the partnerships, in fact, created the new approach, which seems to be normal and something which we should have done it before. But to put together the European Commission, representatives of the government, local politicians, local government, and the experts, to put them together and to propose them to discuss the main topics important for urban dimension was something very, very new. Not only new in the history of the European Union, it was new for these institutions. Because to put together people from different levels and to make them work together, when they got used to think that one level is higher than the other one, so to put them together on the same table, around the table, and on an equal base, this is something new. And of course, not all of them reacted immediately very positively, as the members of the partnerships know very well. So it was not very clear from the very beginning. But in fact, this approach has been approved and was organized through several months. So we were observing the growing number of partnerships and the growing interest in these partnerships. What was the weak point at that time? It was in fact the lack of the organizational framework for this. I mean, first the decision concerning the ownership of the whole exercise. Who is the owner of the urban agenda? Who decides about this? Who has the real influence? Who is responsible for this? From the very beginning, it was not very clear. It was just like it belongs to the member states or to the governments, or the Commission said this is the government's responsibility. the cities, they saw very often that the Commission should do it. The consequence was also the problem of secretariat. Who is responsible for doing it? Who will organize the meetings, and who will cover the costs of the meetings? I remember that from the very beginning, we as the members of the Parliament in the intergroup, we were trying to find the solutions. And it was us who proposed, and we managed to guarantee 2.5 million euro for European Commission to organize the secretariat. And this was our, you can say, input in the whole exercise. But I think that this is also the questions to be answered in future. Because if we want the local politicians and the government to come together and to meet and to work, we should think about the costs and about the secretariat, about the ownership of this. So that's why I think that when we discuss today the good and bad sides of the urban agenda, we can say that as I said, first the multi-level governance, which is extremely important. Secondly, the achievements of the concrete partnerships, which were finalized with the action plans. Very, very important and very interesting for everybody who's interested in the European dimension. But the weak point is still the question about the ownership and, of course, the responsibility. I know very well that in the new regulation, we have a text which, in in underlines the importance of the urban agenda. And even in the budget, there is some money to organize the urban agenda. But in fact, it doesn't give the clear response who is the owner of the whole activity. The other element is the transfer of knowledge. We can say this kind of know-how transfer from partnerships to concrete European legislation. Let's not forget that today we are now on the middle of the procedure of preparation of the new regulation for the cohesion policy and for the other policies for 21-27. And there are a lot of debates concerning the content. There is new situation because, of course, of coronavirus. We are discussing about the new generation fund. This is now, we are just in the middle of the whole debate. So we have to answer the question, what about the urban dimension? Not only in this chapter of ERDF, but we have to discuss the urban dimension within all the European policies. They are completely new situation which we can observe today. First, the role and the importance of the cities and urban cities authorities to fight the climate change. This is something which is now becoming more and more responsibility of the cities, and the cities should be absolutely supported, and they should be helped with the different funds. And this is not just about cohesion policy, this is in all the policies. The other element, which is now is the results or the effects of pandemia. The biggest problems with the hospitals and the whole infrastructure, this is also very often the becoming responsibility of the city authorities. This is the place when we observe the most significant consequences of pandemia. So that's why the cities authorities and the cities in general and the urban dimension should be absolutely better seen and recognized by the European institutions. So that's why when we discuss the urban dimension, and when we speak about the urban agenda, this is not just about European money. It is, of course, about European money, and the conclusions of action plans should be translated in concrete proposal in the European budget. This is clear. The question is how it will be done. We cannot risk the situation that the members of the different groups preparing the action plans, they don't see the consequence, the result, because they are working very hard in their partnerships, and they have to see that this work will be really used to prepare the new period 21-27. So this is about money, but it's also in all the European policies. All the European policies. So the urban agenda and the advantage of the European agenda is this is the cross policies. Let's not forget that the new urban agenda, which has been prepared by UN Habitat, was later, not before. I mean, in fact, the new urban agenda prepared by the UN Habitat is a very broad proposal. Based on SDGs, but when we observe what we are doing in Europe, we are trying to translate it into concrete actions, concrete proposals. So that's why when we discuss the importance of urban agenda, it should be first, it should be maintained, and it should be reinforced. So I think this is important from the formal point of view, financial elements, organization, etc. The ownership of the urban agenda should be clarified and should be very well defined. And I think that probably the new partnership should appear in coming months because we have the new challenges. But we have to observe what will be in the new documents prepared by the German presidency. Notably the new Leipzig Charter, which is a kind of programming document. But this charter will have the implementing document. So I think that this will be the next step in the activities concerning the urbanization. I hope, and I can declare as a member of and the chair of the Urban Intergroup, that we will very, very closely observe the activity concerning the urban dimension in all the European policies. It should be horizontal. It should be coordinated on the Commission level. It should be reinforced financially, because many of the answers which should be given in the new situation in Europe are now in the cities, in the urban areas. So I think that wishing you a very interesting debate, I must say that we have to observe what has been done well and correctly from the beginning with the urban agenda, and to think immediately what about the next steps, and not to make it symbolic action, but to make it as pragmatic as possible and as concrete as possible. I would like to declare that we will also help you to do it.
And that was indeed the video message by pre-recorded by Jan Albrecht. Thank Jan for your contribution, and thank you also, and in particular also Fabienne Keller, representing now the Urban Intergroup, for the offer to continue the work on the urban agenda. That being said, I would like to thank both Karen and Jan for their address, for their words of welcome. And I would like now to present to you our first panel. As I said, we will have more than one panel, but let me first introduce you to the panelists of this first panel. I already mentioned Fabienne Keller, who is the new vice chair of the Urban Intergroup in the European Parliament. She has also been the mayor of the city of Strasbourg. So we're extremely happy to have with her someone on board in the Urban Intergroup who actually knows what it is to govern a city. I also see and welcome Marek Teplansky from the European Commission. Hello, Marek. You are the head of unit of the unit called Inclusive Growth, Urban and Territorial Development, which is the unit that is mostly involved in the urban agenda for the EU, dealing very concretely now with this issue. Thank you also for joining our webinar. Next on my list, but he will actually join us a bit later, which is Kieran McCarthy. So I will choose him after he will join, which will be after 3 o'clock, because there will be an important meeting with Angela Merkel with the Committee of the Region. So that will come a bit later. But next is Fenna Pols, who is the director of the knowledge center called in Dutch Europa Decentraal, Decentral Europe. If I try to give you a translation, I don't actually know if you have a translation of that. But the important thing is that Europa Decentraal is quite a unique knowledge center because it is actually specialized in providing legal support to decentral authorities. And when we talk about better regulation, this is highly relevant. I'm also very happy to have on board Alessandro Rainoldi, who is the head of unit of the territorial development, the territorial development unit in the Joint Research Center, JRC. This unit is a wide unit, but it also deals with the urban activities. So thank you very much for being with us, Alessandro. And then we will have a bit later on our in our panel also Marie Yerouyani, who isn't there yet, I think. Let's see if she also will join us from the European Commission, the RTD DG. And I do see also Akon Jentoft, who is actually the coordinator of one of the very interesting partnerships. In this case, the partnership dealing with the circular economy. I already told you that we will have more interventions also from other coordinators of the different partnerships, plus also Eurocities, the Organization of the Larger Towns and Cities in Europe, also quite active in practically all of the partnerships. We will give them also the floor, but we will start with the panel first. We'll have 3 rounds of different panel discussions. We will first start with a discussion on better regulation, followed by a discussion on the European Green Deal, and then we will focus on the multi-level partnership approach. But before starting the panel discussion, I would like to explain one more time that we have a Q&A option in this Zoom webinar. And I would like to invite all the attendees of this webinar to actually use the Q&A. I don't see a question yet, but please feel free to suggest any questions and actually to upvote questions if you think they are particularly relevant, if you would like us to raise those questions during the panel discussion. So we'll have a close eye on what is happening with this Q&A. You can also chat, and I see that people already started chatting. The chat function is a more general functionality that we would also like to offer you. And just in case you might have or encounter some technical issues, just know that we have people from the EUKN Secretariat ready to have to watch over the technical issues raised in the info box, which is info@eukn.eu. So in case you have any technical questions, please send a mail to that particular email address, info@eukn.eu. I also noticed that some people raised their hand, or I see at least one people raising their hand. It's a bit difficult for me to see. I must disappoint you, but we will ignore the hand raising feature in this webinar. Feel free to suggest questions in the Q&A or otherwise make any comments you want to make in the chat. That being said, I think it's time indeed to start our panel discussion. And I would like to go back to you, Karen van Danzig. I already introduced you. As you said, as Jan Olbricht also mentioned clearly, it was under the Dutch presidency that the urban agenda for the EU was launched. And that launching document was indeed the Pact of Amsterdam. I think Jan Olbricht almost said the Act of Amsterdam, but it was indeed the Pact of Amsterdam. But it did have a huge impact also. And the launching document mentions 3 key objectives that we now know of as the 3 betters: better regulation, better funding, and better knowledge. As the urban envoy, Karen, could you please explain to us what these 3 betters are and why they are particularly relevant, and why the assessment of the European Commission suggests to focus even more on the better regulation in the future, and to some extent also on better funding, but better regulation apparently requires some extra attention. Please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you again for the floor. Well, as urban envoy, my role is to strengthen the position of cities in the EU, and the 3 pillars of the urban agenda: better regulation, better knowledge, but also better funding are important pillars. But if you see, I think at least 70% of all rules and regulations around us are directly or indirectly come from Brussels. The cities are actually the place where this comes together. So they are the place where you see all these regulations and all these policies coming together, and sometimes also conflicting. If you want to influence EU lawmaking, then you can also enhance the position of the urban agenda, but also the urban dimension. Many partnerships have actually delivered a number of better regulation actions. I counted 31. So it's not the most actions of the 115, but I think they could be quite impactful. And that's also one of the reasons for picking the better regulation. As the assessment also said, their effect at this point is still limited and the implementation is too slow. A couple of points that the assessment made is actually the lack of legal and procedural expertise, and sometimes the suboptimal timing. You need to know the European policy making system and regulation system to actually have impact. So that's very important. But sometimes also there are some hesitant cooperation from different sides. I would not say from DG Region, but sometimes from other Commission DGs. So the Netherlands proposed to pick this strand, the better regulation strand, for strengthening the urban agenda. And we called it the Better Regulation Initiative. As a member state, we think that this could be impactful to strengthen this one and to put extra attention on it. It's also, like I said, to increase the impact of the present actions, but also the future actions. Fenna is already in the webinar, and I have asked Europa Decentraal, I will say it in the Dutch way, to, as a well-known institution that has been involved in better regulation from the very start, to draw up a proposal and promote the implementation of this current better regulation action, but also to strengthen the better regulation strand. I think we have a sheet to show the better regulation initiative. Maybe to add, before I show the sheet, yeah, you can show the sheet, but actually all three of the strands are important. We decided to choose this one because the assessment was quite clear on the fact that this one should be strengthened. And we had quite a clear idea with the help of Europa Decentraal how we could do this. So if we see the sheet. I don't see a sheet yet, but there we see something.
Yeah.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, so I think I will give this is the complete better regulation initiative, the 4 blocks. I think I will give the floor now to Fenna to explain how she sees the better regulation initiative and her role, and also maybe explain a little bit more about the blocks. Just to conclude, before I give the floor to Fenna, is that this will be on the agenda of the DGUM on the 21st of October. Up to now, we've had very positive reactions. All motivated parties are welcome to join. That includes everybody in this webinar. It is not supposed to stay a Dutch project. It should become an urban agenda post-2020 strengthening exercise. So it's nice to have your attention and also the floor on this very important matter. And now to Fenna.
Okay, Fenna, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Karen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for the invitation to be here at this Zoom meeting. My name is Fenna Pols. I'm Director of Knowledge Europa Decentraal, and I was one of the members of the REFIT platform of the European Commission for Better Regulation, which brought together the EU national authorities and other stakeholders to improve existing regulation. The REFIT platform had a mandate until October 2019, and the Fit for Future platform will build further on this experience. Knowledge Center Europa Decentraal is an EU law and policy institute, and it's funded by the Dutch Ministry of the Interior and the associations of the local and regional authorities in the Netherlands. We inform and advise on the practical application of EU law and policy. At the Knowledge Center, we are aware of the great importance of better regulation, as we have been involved in several better regulation actions since the start of the better regulation agenda in 2015. We stood at the cradle of the development of the urban agenda and launched our project Bright during the Dutch presidency in the EU in Amsterdam. The result, Karen said it already, 14 partnerships, and we supported several of these partnerships, and specifically the partnership on circular, which ended up in a comprehensive stock-taking exercise of bottlenecks in EU legislation related to the circular economy. Well, about the better regulation initiative in general, we are cooperating with the ministry on the better regulation initiative. And Europa Decentral is an independent foundation which explains EU law to local and regional authorities and is also closely involved in the interpretation. This initiative focuses on offering support with the implementation of current better regulation actions, but also tries to structurally strengthen the better regulation strand in the post-2020 urban agenda. The Better Regulation Initiative currently consists out of 4 elements, and you see it on the sheet as well. You see block 1, that's the quick scan, and that's the assessment of all 31 actions which will be assessed. And the result will be identification of actions on which I will elaborate later. Block 2 is updating the strategy and governance and using lessons are learned in the partnership since 2016. The result will be an overview of different paths forward. Block 3 is a follow-up for high potential actions in the EU urban agenda to advance certain existing better regulation actions. And an example, I mentioned it already, is the partnership circular economy. Block 4 is technical and legal structural support related to present and new partnerships. And element 2 and 4 are the strategic issues for the new period, and block 1 and block 2 are the elements for this period. These 4 building blocks, which we can be used separately, are covered by the Better Regulation Insight tool, also known as Bright. Europa Decentral developed Bright in 2019 on request of the ministry. And the Bright tool consists out of an online tool and a brochure. And the tool can be found for free, and you can find it on Bright indent.tool.eu. So Bright indent.tool.eu, and it is designed to help stakeholders with bringing EU regulatory bottlenecks to the attention of the European Commission. I refer to the partnerships. For example, the circular, Mr. Hakon Jentoft is coordinator of the partnership and is experienced with the Europa Decentral Bright approach. The tool itself consists of 3 parts. And the first one is being the e-learning tool. And this tool provides information to get the stakeholders acquainted with the Bright method. The second part is the quick scan I mentioned already. This is a practical instrument that maps out the legal framework and classifies the type of bottlenecks. Thereafter, it tracks the current status of legislation in the EU policy making cycle. And this will result in an advice which will include whether follow-up action is appropriate and what that could entail. In-depth research of the development of an executive brochure could be an example. And as the quick scan is such a versatile tool providing analytical assessments, it can be used in all parts of the Better Regulation initiative. Lastly, there is the Better Regulation Roadmap. And this is an interactive infographic that provides an insightful view into the EU policy making cycle. So I will round up. To conclude, I think it's very important to support the Better Regulation initiative in order to improve the EU policy and policy-making process. We need the input from local and regional authorities. In order to strengthen their position in the policy-making process, we need to provide them with tools like the quick scan that are easily accessible and supplement the work of the partnerships. So at Europa Decentraal, we want to continue supporting partnerships using our specialist knowledge for the benefit of local and regional authorities, but also for the benefit of better regulation in general. Thank you for your attention. Karen.
Karen, are you going to continue or?
No, I think there's nothing to
Otherwise,
add. I think it's a
no.
beautiful synopsis of what we are proposing, and I think it's a good start the conversation and actually allow the other panelists to say something. I'd be very interested to see what they
I just
have to say.
I'm happy that I see actually that people are now indeed using the Q&A function. I see there's a simple question that you might be able to answer, Karen, and that's who is going to pay for this better regulation initiative? It's a very Dutch question in a way, but in this case, it's coming from an Italian colleague. So it's
from an Italian to a Dutch, so that sounds good. I think I might make a little joke about this, but the quick scan we're paying. So the quick scan of the 31 actions will be paid by the Dutch ministry after the DGUM actually is as positive as the UDG is. Block 2 is is actually the strategy, the different paths. This is a co-financing project. I mean, we would like to contribute, but we cannot probably come up with a complete financing for this. So this should be something of us together, should be something of more member states, the Commission, maybe other organizations together. Block 3 is actually the result of Block 1. So Block 3 is you have the quick scan, you find out which type of which type of present actions could be successful, what way forward, how would they fit, and then it's pretty much up to the partnership to decide if they want to do this. The financing, at least I know I'm looking at Marek, but I mean the financing would be wonderful if this came from the EUI secretary or from the targeted or joint support, which is possible at this point already until I think next year, September somewhere. So that should be timing wise, it should work. And Block 4, that is the future. I mean, I hope that we could have technical, legal, structural support for all partnerships now and in the future. So that would be something that I would be looking also to Marek for the Secretariat to provide. Obviously, this would go within a tendering. I mean, this is something, and there might be more parties that would be interested also to provide this type of information. And obviously, Fenna is definitely looking for cooperation in this. She would also be very interested. So I think that's to round it up. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I'll come back to you, Marek, in a second. But first, I would like to give the floor to one of the coordinators of the partnerships to ask her perspective on the on what has just been shared. Michaela Kouwen, I mean, she will make her visible. Yeah, there she is. So I would like to invite you to the virtual stage here, Michaela. Welcome also in our webinar. You are representing the housing partnership, and it has been seen as a very positive example of the better regulation strand. And if we zoom into action 1 of your partnership, which is guidance on EU regulation and public support for housing, I would like to ask you to share your thoughts and your perspective what we just have shared. So and then you also prepared one slide that will show, but the floor is yours. Please share your thoughts with us from this practical experience that you have as coordinator of the housing partnership. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mart, and hello to everyone from Vienna. I'm in Vienna currently. It's ice cold. So no change to the Brussels weather we're used to. So anyway, I'm happy especially to be here today because I'm really excited about the better regulation initiative So again, it's up to us to be grateful for the initiative from the Netherlands. I mean, you were like the mamas and papas of the urban agenda, and now you're the mamas and papas of its implementation. So that's really great, and I really appreciate that. With regard to our work as Housing Partnership on better regulation, I think that what made us a little bit special, I mean, everybody knows us in the meantime, so we are kind of the weirdos of the urban agenda in a way. But what made us really special is that we were in fact implicitly tasked by the Pact of Amsterdam to deliver on a very specific issue with regard to housing. And this was the issue of state aid. It's explicitly mentioned in the Pact of Amsterdam. And this is why we really took it very, very seriously. And we delivered, I mean, we put a lot of energy in that during our partnership. And we put also a lot of resources into it, again, with the help of the Dutch government. I don't know where we would be without the Dutch. I mean, come on, when we talk about urban. Anyway, so what we have achieved during the partnership is that we really, I think, highlighted that there is an issue regarding state aid and EU regulation in general and affordable housing production. We did this via different means, and I'm not sure if this slide is visible because I'm lost in tools. But there was a big, we undertook 2 studies looking at the specific situations in new and old member states, where we really saw that state aid can, from different angles, have negative effects on affordable housing production, but also renovation of existing housing, because we were also keen to give a whole picture here. So what we really did, we developed at a very early stage already a guidance paper that was mentioned, and that also led us to recommend a concrete change of current SGI decisions that are relevant to affordable housing production. On content, I would say that if we look at the problem that in fact the housing crisis is provoked by massive decline in state support in social, public and affordable housing. So we looked into where is investment potential blocked. Obviously, there are several reasons to this, but one being legal uncertainty and unclarity in the field of state aid. So we discussed this also through the whole time of the partnership on several levels with Commission responsibles from DG Competition, DG Regio, Cabinet of Mr. Timmermans, because he is responsible for the better regulation work strand of the Commission. So we did a lot of work on that. And I think that this is now getting into the institutional, I would say, process, slowly but surely, because what we already have had quite early was that the Committee of the Regions, an important partner to us, took the issue up and produced an opinion on that. We were also involved in the DG Competition's fitness check on state aid rules. Lately, also the European Economic and Social Council started to take up the issue, and we are very, very happy that the European Parliament is now drafting an own initiative report where all the findings that we found are reflected. So I think that with all this, we achieved the most that one can achieve as a partnership when you talk about moving a certain recommendation to the EU policy making arena. And I think that the challenge now is really what will happen with the ongoing study of DG Competition, where they look at market trends in health and social services and EU state aid implications. We had to fight our way into this study a little bit, I must say. I mean, to be open also about the bottlenecks is, I mean, you're working 3 years, you deliver an action plan, it is endorsed by the Council of ministers responsible for urban issues. And then DG Competition, after talking to us 3 years, it forgets about us when they do this study. So this was a little bit one of the bottlenecks that I'm not sure how we can fit this into the ideas that have just been presented. But I think that this is something we should also address when we are honest about the chances to implement proposals. To close, I think that state aid rules are something that has shown to be now really under a new assessment, I would say, in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we have seen that there is room to alleviate some of the measures and some of the strict rules. I think that the housing crisis is so important to the quality of life of people that we should maybe use this momentum to also proceed a little bit with more courage and more hope and more, I would say, fierceful commitment to change things. So this is what I wanted to say about our regulation work strength. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michaela. That was very interesting. Now I think it's really time to give the floor to Marek Teplansky, because indeed there are quite a few questions on the table that might be answered by your unit, Marek. We all know that you are, with your unit, the main supporter of the urban agenda for the EU in many different ways. You are leading a team that pretty much knows everything about the urban agenda, and is now also very much involved in, let's say, the further development and implementation of the urban agenda. Based on that rich experience that you have, what is your view on the question, what is needed in order to strengthen the different strands of the urban agenda, the three different strands, and then particularly focusing on the better regulation strand? So how do you see this, and how could it be strengthened in the near future? You have the floor for around 10 minutes, so you have some extra speaking time, but I'll give you the floor to answer that question in 10 minutes.
Thanks a lot, Martin. Yeah. I hope you can hear me well,
yeah,
and colleagues. Also, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be with you, and indeed, we, in particular in my unit, but it's not only work of my unit. Obviously, we work very closely with the colleagues in other services who are associated with the work of the partnerships. Nevertheless, we provide for the interface between the Commission services, the urban agenda, and indeed, as it was mentioned, we do provide an important support to the implementation and delivery of the urban agenda as such. Let me perhaps then reflect a bit also in relation to what was said earlier by Chair Olbricht and also by Karen when referring or introducing actually the topic. And here I would perhaps stop at the assessment which was outlined. Indeed, the Commission commissioned an assessment, and it was not the only assessment which was delivered for the purposes of a reflection of the urban agenda. And indeed, there is a body of findings, and I would say food for thought for everyone when speaking and reflecting on how we move on from the stage where we are now. And where we are, I mean, indeed, the urban agenda was launched as if we can call it, as institutional experimentation. And indeed, the question now remains, how do we move from this phase into something which, let's say, takes into account and addresses also issues which were picked up in the pilot phase, because we were in a kind of pilot phase with the number of partnerships, with the workings and methods which were developed also over time as we approached the individual the work of the partnerships. And there I would want to highlight perhaps three areas which indeed deserve the attention. And they were mentioned in some of the examples of the actions by Karen, but nevertheless, there is a set of recommendations, recommendations relating to enhancing the implementation and the impact of actions. where we have a body of actions, but let's see, how much actually, we are able to influence with the results and the deliverables which are in there, broader audiences or the systems which are relevant for the workings of the partnerships. Another block of recommendations was relating to the engagement of stakeholders, and that applies to stakeholders across the board, with the member states, commission services, other institutions, or even the cities. And the final one was related to the governance and the internal communications, within the group or the body of the urban agenda, as well as the external framework. I think that all of us agree that we have a number, a very important of results which are coming from the partnerships on different areas of activity, be it on better knowledge, better funding, or better regulations. Indeed, what was there as a main conclusion, where we will have to look at seriously, and we see this recommendation taken up in the implementation document for the Leipzig Charter, is to properly reflect ex ante on the very objectives of the partnerships and impact we would like to achieve when we start to work together. We define actually the issue or the problem we would like to address in the context of the multi-level governance, in the setting where all of us will be working together. And I think that this is important and valid not only for not only with the for the workings of the better regulations trend, but it applies everywhere. What we need indeed is a better reflection, more perhaps targeted approach, and have an impact assessment before we start to engage and work together. I do think that we need also some flexibility for the partners to come up with a certain adjustments, in terms of the methods, scoping, and so on. And I think that this is where we will have to invest ourselves more. Now, when we speak about the better regulation, I would say that there what we need to also take into account, and is applied not only for the better regulation strength, but for all of these, that the partnerships are not on the way closed bubbles. They are not working, the partners are not working between themselves, but these partnerships normally should be properly embedded to a wider institutional or policy context in which they are operating. And I think that this is also part of the ex ante assessment and the work we will have to put in there, how well actually we can connect to the processes which are already in place, which are well established, and how to make sure that the work in the partnerships can actually connect to this external environment. So we will need to increase more of external coherence in the way the partnerships actually they deliver, and then we bring the effects of the partnerships to the relevant processes. Now, for better regulation, I think that this is even more valid because if we are speaking about the influence in EU legislation, obviously one cannot abstract from the legislative process which is in place because of the treaties, because of the way actually how the legislation is conceived or established, and at the end of the day also approved. And this is not only let's say the workings of the European Commission, but there are other institutional players who are equally involved. There are member states involved in these processes. So we will need to look at very carefully at what is in place and how the partnerships and the work on the better regulations trend can actually be connecting to the processes which are objectively in place because of our treaties and because of the way how the repartition of powers between different actors is established. Let me say that we are very closely working with our colleagues across different services, and in particular now when we're speaking about the better regulation, with our colleagues in the Secretariat General. So we are actively engaging them in this dialogue and also in the reflections for the future. What we have for the moment is a set of principles which should be applied for the future urban agenda, as entailed in the implementation document. Now, what will be crucial is how this set of principles will be translated into operational reality. And there, obviously, as concerns the better regulation, we will be engaging with our colleagues who are in charge of these processes in the Commission. Let me say also that in terms of the, let's say, taking into account the assessment and the recommendations in there, we are obviously not waiting only for the final piece of work which will be presented as it was mentioned during the Slovene presidency in terms of operationalization, but we already put in place responses to the assessment which we presented in the beginning of this year in Porto during the Cities Forum. So we have put in place also additional support for the implementation of actions, which can be either targeted or joint support for issues of common interest for the partnerships. We are looking at and we did increase internal communication by preparing an internal newsletter to the partners involved in the urban agenda. Obviously, the remaining parts where it will come to discussion of the funding, and Karen, you several times called me in that action. I mean, obviously now the uncertainty in terms of what the funding source might be is, I would say, reduced compared to the situation where we were starting earlier, because we have a regulatory provision where European Regional Development Fund has a possibility or scope for the action and for the support under the European Urban Initiative. And we indeed contributed significantly also in this programming period, where we matched up actually the contributions mentioned earlier, which was coming from the Parliament, and well, more than double the amount of the resources available for the urban agenda. But these are, let's say, I do take that these are very important reflections on who will finance what and how the actually support will be organized, because that will be the lifeline for the operational framework, which hopefully we will start to discuss more in detail after the Leipzig ministerial conference. But I would say that this is not the let's say the first thing to address. I mean, let's first see how we can translate these principles and the findings of the different assessment, because the Commission's role is not the only assessment, and how we can translate it into a new and I would expect a different and higher quality level of engagement between different partners. We are definitely interested and very much committed to continue working closely in the context of the urban agenda, and this way also supporting it. We would like to build on what we together in the number of partnerships built on in different strands of work. So we would consider this work cannot be simply put aside and then we start working on something new, but we would be looking forward to build bridges between the work and the potential which was established now, and bridge it to the future. And I can say that on our side, we will be indeed an active partner in these discussions. We have exchanges already in the context of the intergovernmental cooperation, where indeed we will continue contributing, and also discussing in particular the initiative which was presented in the beginning of our webinar. I would conclude perhaps by emphasizing that, well, it's not on the way undertaking which will depend only on one stakeholder or one institution. I think that the key is not here in the hands of the Commission, who should take on board everything what the partnerships will produce, or to find the extensions only to the Commission. But I think that it's for all of us, be it at the local level, at the member state level, different European institutional partners who will have to contribute in the same way. And I would say that the quality will also depend on the level of our engagement and the commitment for the future. On behalf of my unit, my colleagues, and I would say that also colleagues who are very closely working with us in the current setting, in the partnerships, I can say and confirm that we are very keen to continue in the future and see the new and better quality and in the way how we cooperate, and also connect the workings of this multi-level governance setting to the processes, policies which are taking place on the EU level. But we would also emphasize that we need to see these extensions also in the national context. I mean, it's important to increase the engagement of the local authorities and connecting them to the processes which are normally owned by the member states. When we speak about the engagement, for example, in a better regulation, in the discussions with the Commission, with different expert groups, and so on. So I would perhaps stop here my intervention. I hope I didn't pass the time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Marek. If I look at the Q&A, the answers that are sent in the Q&A, I do see some more questions indeed about the funding. I understand from you, Marek, that it's a bit premature to say that the Commission will pay for the block 4 of the better regulation proposal, as is also suggested by some people. But it is good to know that indeed, in the spirit of multi-level cooperation, that is this offer to work closely between Commission, member states, and the European Parliament, and of course also the cities. And I would like now also to move to the cities, and I'd like to invite to the stage, our virtual stage, Pietro Revilio, who is representing Eurocities, organization of the larger cities in Europe. I would like to ask you, Pietro, being involved with Eurocities in many of the different partnerships, actually, what your opinion is on the better regulation initiative presented by Karen and Fenna, and what should this better regulation strand actually, how could it be further supported from the point of view of the cities that you represent? The floor is yours, please.
Thanks a lot, Martin, for the question. As most of you are probably aware, our network is involved in basically all the partnership of the urban agenda. So we are very much involved in all this process, and we very much welcome, it's no secret that we have very much welcomed the Better Regulation Initiative from the beginning. And we have entered in a dialogue with the Dutch urban envoy from the beginning to really set the tone for this initiative and to contribute with some inputs. So we are very much supportive, and we think that the initiative really goes at the heart of the problem with the urban agenda, and it really looks at legal and procedural issues that should be improved and should be further taken into account. So we know that this initiative builds on other exercises such as the Finnish clustering proposal. So we were involved in that, and we were very happy to see that this proposal provided further inputs to further work on better regulation aspects in the context of the urban agenda. And we have followed also, let's say, the process through which the Better Regulation Initiative was presented to different stakeholders, and also in the context of the Urban Development Group. And we have seen that this has been quite a fruitful discussion, and we were quite happy to have the Dutch Urban Envoy presenting to our members actually what the Better Regulation Initiative is. And I must say that the feedback from our members was very positive. They were quite very much appreciating what was presented, and they think that this initiative should be supported in the future. And they even refer to, let's say, some pilots related to the circular economy partnership that brought added value to the partnerships. So we truly support this, and we believe it's a fundamental step to bring forward the urban agenda, and also let's say implement the principle of the new Leipzig Charter. So we really hope that this impetus will stay at the intergovernmental level, also with the trio presidency, as Karen was mentioning before. Now, just a few aspects of appreciation of the Better Regulation Initiative from our point of view. We very much appreciated that the proposal looks at providing expertise from the beginning to the partnerships, which it's something that our members have really looked at. They really needed legal and strategic support from the beginning of the partnership, and most of them pointed out that having had that from the beginning would have made a strong difference on the outcome of the partnership. So that's one aspect that we would like to emphasize. And another aspect that we think it's very important, and we have appreciated from the Better Regulation Initiative, it's also trying to connect with the broader better regulation agenda of the new Commission, and that's something that we've been discussing also with the Dutch Urban Envoy, to create stronger synergies with Fit for Future platform, and also to create an opportunity for better regulation to have a top-down and a bottom-up approach, meaning something coming from the Fit for Future platform, and also having inputs coming directly from the partnerships and the actions, and really linking it to the broader European context and agenda. So these are some things that we think are very, very important. And maybe just a few comments also on in what ways the better regulation strength should be further supported in the future. I think many of the previous speakers already mentioned that the very important first important aspect is to have enough resources available to really put in place this better regulation initiative. So that's something that as a network we're really hoping to see, and these resources I think should not just come in the form of a dedicated secretariat, but I think also a lot of resources should also come for implementing the actions, also coming to get to the cities for getting things done. So that's something very important. Another aspect that we think it's key, it's also let's say building the ownership, not just at the multi-level in terms of multi-level governance with the Commission, the different departments of the Commission, and cities and all the members of the partnerships, but also at the intergovernmental level. I think that's as I was mentioning, is very important. Without the buy-in from member states and ministries in member states, of course, this initiative will only bring limited results. So I think that's an important aspect that we should keep in mind. And last but not least, of course, as Eurocities, we have very much are in contact with politicians on the ground, and we think that important let's say buy-in should come also from the politicians on the ground on this initiative. And we think that you know, high-level political support should come from them, and they should be involved in this whole process. So this is my final remark is we will try to, let's say, have that kind of political buy-in from local leaders.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pietro. Well, we'll come back to some of the questions at the last discussion round, and I would like to encourage people to send in questions for the Q&A that we can also process a bit during the break. I would also like to invite you to vote for questions if you want to upvote them, actually, to give them more exposure. That being said, I would like now to change a bit the setting of the panel with help from my colleagues, because it's about time to move to the second round of our panel discussion, which will focus on the European Green Deal. And for that, we're going to start with a short video again. And this time it's a video that was prepared by the Partnership on the Circular Economy, which is one of the partnerships, of course, very closely involved in the topics related to the European Green Deal. So I'm looking at my colleagues. Yes, I see the video is ready to be played. So let's play this video, and then we will continue our panel with Karen van Dantzig, obviously, but also Hakon as the coordinator of the Partnership on Circular Economy, Fabienne Keller and Alessandro Rainoldi. But first the video, please, colleagues.
The fast-growing cities of today house most of the world population and consume 70% of all resources and energy. As a consequence, they emit 70% of all greenhouse gases and generate about half of the planet's waste. Today's linear cities experience increasing demand for resources and diminishing supplies and are simply not sustainable. However, cities can be key to drive circular change. Transitioning to circular economy is not just about saving and reusing resources. It is about identifying and implementing innovative ways to make, use, reuse and recover materials, products and energy, and thereby reduce our impact on the environment. But what does a circular city look like? Energy production is renewable and local. Mobility systems are clean and shared. Buildings are designed to be flexible and modular. Urban farms and waste recovery bring bioeconomy to the next level. And all products are designed to be shared, leased and easily recovered. We are ready to support the transition to circular cities of the future. Are you?
That was a very nice video. Hakon, as the coordinator of the Circular Economy Partnership, for sure, for you, it must have been a sort of a wonderful initiative that was embraced by by this new Commission to focus that strongly on the European Green Deal. The topic of circular economy is, I think, high on everyone's agenda at the moment, not only cities, but also member states and the European Parliament, obviously. Can you explain us a bit to what extent this European Green Deal actually does represent a window of opportunity for your partnership? At the same, I would like to invite you also to talk us a bit about the main achievements of this partnership, which is also, I think, one of the topics that we would like to touch upon in this webinar, the concrete topics, the real impact that you can have as a partnership. The floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And I must say that the video that you just showed us is mainly made by the European Investment Bank, which was a very, very important partner into the partnership. So although we share all the views in the video, it's definitely something that we should honor the European Investment Bank. The Green Deal is in a way for me, and not only as part of the Urban Agenda Partnership, but also representing the city of Oslo and Eurocities working groups on waste, this is some sort of dream actually, because the shift into the circular economy and the way the Commission has proposed this, and to follow up the first ambition in the first Circular Economy Action Plan, it's very how to say ambitious, but also visionary for the future. And it fits into what we have discussed within our partnership. And to bring the link to the other discussion, the former discussion on better regulation, I must say that one of the most important things that we have found out during our work is the action on how to transform our regulation from a risk-based regulation into a value-based regulation, which means that you shift from the risk of waste as something that's threatening our health and our environment into the resources that are in the products, that are in the materials that we are using, and how to make that back into the economy instead of becoming waste at all. So one of our main action is actually in totally link with what the Commission proposed in the Green Deal, to shift the focus from waste management, which I'm a waste management man, so I can say this, but into the product part, the design part, the production part, the consumption part, and we need a totally shift in that. And also to bring the link back to the discussion on regulation, this is something that is not, or at least when we were working on it, it was not proposed by it was not an initiative from the Commission, so it didn't fit into the initiative part where we could comment on what was only going on. It was clearly something that we didn't know how to actually transform our thoughts and visions into EU legislation, and we needed the help from Europa Decentral to do that, to find a way to transform some visionary ideas into the legal framework. So we need the support from really good lawyers and really good knowledge in the European legislation to transform some ideas into EU policy. So the link to the former discussion is very clear into one of the most important actions that we have proposed, and into the Green Deal as well. And for the other actions, they are different very much from concrete knowledge actions, way to do circular economy on a local level, and guidelines and so on. But what we can see as one of the problems is that, and I think that's from all sorts of projects on the European level, is that you bring forward knowledge, but how to disseminate that to all the citizens and all the cities in Europe. We need also the support to find a way to disseminate the results from the Urban Agenda Partnership results, but also from URBEC projects and other projects that's going on at the same time, how to translate the good recommendations into the languages in Europe. Now it's very much up to the different partnerships to do that. We have done it from the Prato partner in Prato in Italy, have translated 2 of our guidelines into Italian, and the same in Spain. Barcelona is doing the same into Catalonian language for one of the actions. So we also need that part to be developed within the framework. But to your question, I think the Green Deal is, in some way, I should say that the partnership have motivated the European Commission to propose the Green Deal. But I'm modest, and it's not like that, I think. But we definitely have been in the same thinking as the Commission. And secondly, the experience of working in the partnership to bring the bottom-up perspective to focus on barriers on local level and try to find a way to solve those barriers together with the member states, together with the Commission, and together with the other partners within the partnership. It's been very, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Håkon. Now, of course, circular economy, what I said, is so high on the agenda of the different cities. And there are different ways in which cities can actually, let's say, work towards this systemic transformation of our society. And one way of doing so is by changing with the public procurement methods that cities are using. With that, I would like to invite to our virtual stage one more time, Valentina Schippers, who is representing the partnership on public procurement as the coordinator. And I would like to ask you, Valentina, what your perspective is on actually how cities can use public procurement as a tool to move, let's say, further down the road of greening their economy, making their economies more circular indeed. And said you also have a video, and I don't know if you want to start first or the video start. You want to have the video first as a kickoff? You need to mute. You need to unmute
please.
first, Valentina. Okay, then we'll start first with the video, and then we'll give you the floor to explain what we just said. So, colleagues.
Cities buy goods, works and services to fulfill their needs, based on decisions about price and quality. This is called public procurement. Every year, the public sector spends a huge amount of money on procurement, 2,000 billion euros. We want to spend this money responsibly. European cities face challenges on different levels. Public procurement can contribute to find innovative and sustainable solutions for these challenges. This is our partnership. Our aim is to push forward procurement as a strategic driver to help cities make a positive impact. You can also benefit from these 7 actions. It starts with building a strategy. For example, how to go about circular procurement. Local cooperation centres provide the opportunity to exchange knowledge between public buyers on a practical level. To make full use of the market potential, an innovation broker brings buyers and suppliers together. Innovations ask for investments. Where do you find the funds? Understanding the legal framework allows you to use it to its full potential. And with measuring the impact of spend, we've come full circle. Our partnership delivers the following products: guidance building strategy, training circular procurement, setting up local cooperation centres, roadmap on innovation broker, recommendations on funding, practical legal framework, measuring spend and wider impact tool. We believe these products will help European cities and public authorities to make a positive impact. Together, we can make a difference. Are you interested in the possibilities of innovative and responsible public procurement? Check for more information here.
So together we can make a difference, Valentina. Well, it will be interesting to hear a bit from you what difference you have made so far with your public procurement partnership.
Yes, we delivered 7 actions, as you already saw it in this short video. And in fact, through public procurement, you can achieve a lot, and you can solve a lot of challenges cities and towns are dealing with. If you take social aspects, like creating new jobs or include refugees. If you take green aspects, like achieve circular economy or achieve EU Green Deal goals. If you take housing, to build new houses, everything is possible by using public procurement as a strategic tool. As you see this slide, I would like to give a short explanation about one of our actions. Circular procurement was kind of also collaboration. This action was transported from circular economy partnership, from HACON partnership to ours, and we also had frequently contact about how to give a body to this this action. We delivered a circular procurement training, and because we see that there is sometimes a lack of knowledge in the public authorities in the cities and towns how to procure circular, and also kind of risk aversion. So by developing this training, we help cities and towns to procure a more circular. And what we achieved, we have different tools for support, like networking, publications, this training. There are also fact sheets. We developing also e-learning module, because also in this COVID-19 period, it's often not possible to join this training physically at location. So this e-learning module, you can learn more about circular procurement, staying after your notebook or tablet at your home place. And how we take this further, of course, live support, if it will be possible again, but also through telephone. This e-learning module I mentioned, there is also a lot of information on these links. I think Mart will also share these slides after this session, so you can also use these links to learn more about possibilities and tools and fact sheets and circular procurement guidances.
Okay, thank you very much, Valentina. Now, we paid a lot of attention to the partnerships and to the cities. We heard also the European Commission and the perspective of the Dutch Urban Envoy. But we should not forget, we also have the European Parliament among us. And I deliberately waited a bit asking you the first questions, Ms. Fabienne Keller. But I know that you have a lot of practical experience, being also the former mayor of the city of Strasbourg. That means that you must have also a lot of experience dealing very concretely with the issues dealt with within the different partnerships of the urban agenda. I would like to ask you a question about this European Green Deal, and more specifically, knowing that how the urban agenda has also gained in political relevance and how it tries to keep up with the political challenges now also addressed by this new commission in the new programming period. Can you tell us a bit what in your view the urban dimension of this European Green Deal is, and how the European Parliament, or perhaps even more specifically the urban intergroup in European Parliament, can actually support this link between the urban agenda and the European Green Deal? The floor is yours. You need to unmute first, Ms. Keller.
Thank you. I am very glad to participate to this discussion, and I am still learning a lot. Actually, I don't understand all the names of the different programs and everything, but I'm trying hard. I am very motivated by the urban issue, of course, because I am a former mayor of a city, and the issue we are dealing with today, the Green Deal, how can we save our environment, have a lower carbon footprint, is very important for me too. I made a lot of work on that subject because I was, after being mayor, member of the French Senate, and I analyzed all the work done at the European level by the European directives that were taken very early, actually, but in different fields: waste, water, quality of air, etc., biodiversity. But they were very useful in terms of helping the member states to progress, and helping the cities to progress as well in different fields. But as Hekons just said, we have to change our paradigm. We have to move from a vertical, subject by subject oriented regulations based more or less on punishment. You have to do this, you have to have such and such level, to something more transversal, because a very concrete example. If you progress in cleaning the water, how do you call that? The wastewater, used water, then you use more energy to improve all your processes because you have to multiply them, which is somehow in contradiction concerning the global footprint of your management. So we have at some point in time to mix the different issues. And may I also insist on what Jan said in his introductory speech. We don't have to have any more multi-level governments in terms of additional levels, but each of us doing well its job. For example, the city doing very well its job, but also the region in her responsibilities and the national and the European level, etc. So how can we do this in our cities, and how can Europe help us to do this? By taking into account the urban factor, which is a little complex because Europe prefers to give responsibility to the member states and not define necessarily how it works with different actors within the country. And the city is not only important for the people living in the city, it's also a reference for all the areas, for larger region. So we have to put some specific programs, and I'm very impressed that the Minister Karen van den Sik not only started this urban agenda 4 years ago, but she makes follow-up. She wants to make sure in our European policy we are able to push some ideas as operational as possible. And as you may know, Jan, with his colleague Margarita Marquez, is one of the main persons for the discussion of the MFF. So he can put some operational signals for cities. For example, I am very involved in the question of difficult suburbs. It's not an environmental issue, but it's a social issue. We should put a minimum percentage of investment or policy tools for these areas. Otherwise, they don't get much. We put a 30% target on the Green Deal projects. That's very good, but we have to explain how we are going to measure that, but it's a very good incentive. And I'm sure cities won't have any difficulty to get to that, because I can tell as mayor, as former mayor, it's a natural concern of our citizens, and more so, people want to participate and they ask for coherence, global, how they deal with their waste, how they deal with the water they use, sometimes getting the raining water for the grass or to wash the car, asking for where do things go. It's not enough for citizens to put waste in the poubelle, but it's important to know where it goes after that and what's the end of it. So I think we have to find processes in our European decisions that are understandable, legible for our citizens, targeted to cities, because we have very strong tools in cities. We have budgets, we have responsibilities. We are obliged to do something in different aspects. And for example, we have the responsibility of urban organization, which is important for transport, which is important for waste management, for water management, and for people's quality of life and quality of air. So we are a kind of integrate place of integration of the different environmental policies. So sorry to bring different aspects, very operational and others more global, but I want really to support Jan and all our colleagues in this will to put in acts Green Deal in the cities. And as Valentina said, I confirm that public procurement are a good levy for that. It's not the only one, but it's an efficient one.
Yeah, thank you for that, Fabienne. You mentioned very clearly the European factor, and with that, I would also like to give the floor now to Alessandro Rainoldi, who is from the Joint Research Center, bringing in the research perspective, actually. Alessandro, can you please tell us, I mean, how the GRC, and then more specifically, perhaps the team working on urban activities, can actually contribute to the urban agenda and this European Green Deal by providing evidence for policy making? The floor is yours, please.
Yes, sure. Many thanks, Martin. Thanks to all those who are watching and listening. I think that we have listened so far to very, very interesting contributions, and the whole support and effort, I would say, across and around the urban agenda is amazing. We at the GRC, as Mart has correctly pointed out, we do not have a policy to support or to champion. We are supposed to deliver science and deliver science-based advice to our colleagues in policy DGs that will implement, design, evaluate policies. And in my unit, we have a specific team dealing with urban issues. Let me make a couple of comments. So the first one, statement/comments. The first one would be, there is one of the key pillars of the urban agenda, which is called better knowledge. And for us, this is our cup of tea in a way. We are striving to produce better knowledge and to deliver better knowledge, but not just to publish in scientific papers, in scientific journals, but to really put it at the service of the policymakers, not only in Brussels, but also in the member states and in the cities, so across the whole EU. And the first comment that comes to my mind is the following. Well, I think that better knowledge starts with better data, and that is tricky at the urban level. That is specifically tricky at the urban level because Eurostat does not really help that much, and neither do national statistical offices. And the second point is that in order to deliver proper science-based advice, I would say, even if you have very good data, that does not work only with that. And our kind of philosophy of tackling this issue is also to work coupling, putting together data knowledge which is given by data or by scientific publication, so I would say desk-based knowledge with community-based knowledge. So trying to understand where is the knowledge which is not written on paper, but it's in the mind, it's in the head, it's in the brains of those who work on policies, specifically at city level. And there's a lot of people, brilliant people who work on that. So that is, in a way, I think a must. And the urban agenda, I think, represents this very well, the partnerships. I mean, it's exactly about that, putting together cities, but not only cities. So putting together actors in a very nice fashion, because it's not a one-fits-all solution, but it's actually bottom-up, and it puts together urban administrations, urban stakeholders, can put together regional players, networks of practitioners, commission directorate generals, other institutions, other organizations. And that is exactly the point of adding up to the knowledge which is based on data. So that particular level of layer of knowledge which is given by people. And how can we do that, and how at least how do we think we could actually bring it one step forward? It is about generally understanding that cities are places above all, and in places you have necessarily a multi-scale approach, you have a multi-theme approach, you have a multi-actor perspective. So we think that if we want to deliver additional value added in knowledge production and also in knowledge managing, so putting together, joining the dots of different sources of knowledge, we need to work on the place, on the understanding that that the city is a kind of a mix of people, services, spaces, functions. And if you take a theme in particular, like it can be circular economy, for example, for the Green Deal, or one of the renewable energy. And if you deliver a policy action in that particular theme, you have to take care of trade-offs or complementarities and go beyond the actual thematic approach. And finally, maybe I just say something that I would like to comment on what Madame Keller has just pointed out, which I think is very important, that a city does not end where the city boundaries are. And therefore, we also have to put on top of all these challenges that we have in understanding how knowledge can be useful to cities, another dimension, which is the territorial dimension. So a city is not necessarily a city administration or a municipality. It's something else. It's a functional area where again, a lot of phenomena occur at the same time. And therefore, again, and I come back to where I start, the challenge of data is enormously, I would say the challenge is challenging. Oh yes, it is enormously challenging, but we hope to try to tackle it. And again, we cannot solve everything at once, but step by step we can make it. And I would invite therefore all the stakeholders, the persons, those who are listening to actually go and have a look at our products, at our sites, the Urban Data Platform, the Community of Practice on Cities, that are exactly there in order for us to get the knowledge and to get the feedback that it's useful for us to, again, take knowledge one step further. And I would stop here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alessandro. By mentioning the functional urban areas, you already enter upon a topic that we will discuss after the break, which is dealing with multi-level governance and the complexities of multi-level governance. Because indeed, I mean, this is a spatial scale that is absolutely relevant to many of the work of the different partnerships all dealing with the urban agenda, or working within the framework of the urban agenda. I'm looking at the clock. It is now, well, almost exactly, it's 1 minute past 4 o'clock. I said we are collecting questions now for the Q&A. We'll take a short break now, a 15 minutes break, to give you a bit of time also to stretch your legs. And at the same time, I would like to encourage you to provide more suggestions for questions that we will address in the round after the break, which is more of an open round also. with a short panel, but also with more time for Q&A. So please do suggest those questions and vote also for questions if you would like to, or upvote questions if you would like to do that. And I'm looking forward to the continuation of our discussions at 4:15. So you can stay connected. You can switch off your video screens for the panelists who are visible now, and I will call everyone to the virtual stage after 4:15. So thank you very much for now. We'll take a short break and be back in about 15 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, Mark.
Hi.
Hi, you're joining in the break. That's why no one's here.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very quiet indeed because you joined in the break. There's Mart.
Hi,
I'm there too.
Mart.
Yeah,
Hi.
reading the questions that we received in the Q&A. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mart.
Yeah, okay, this is working fine. Yeah, you get the floor after the break, right? So we'll start again at 4:15. And actually we will
open with you.
Indeed, with you. With first the video, right? And then follow-up intervention.
Is there a
from your
video?
side.
Okay.
You know, the video on the academy, on the Urban Academy, that was made by who was it, Harvey?
Oh, okay.
Now there are these nice action videos.
Yeah.
We will show that one.
Okay, great. How's it going so far?
And also you have your slide, right? We will also show your slide.
Ah, yeah. Okay, helpful. I think you want to do something in 5 minutes, huh? I understand, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it doable?
For sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So how's it going?
Then
How's it going?
McCarthy. And then actually it's an open discussion. So we are collecting now questions sent in by the attendees, and there's an open discussion.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I mean, if any attendees are still there, they will now also hear us.
Yeah, they will hear us. Yeah, there are.
So that's good to know.
The number is going up, so it's 34. I'll take my own personal short break now also, and I'll come back in 3 minutes. Okay, see you there.
Hey, Mark. Hi.
Goedemiddag, hoi hoi.
Hallo.
Afternoon.
Ik was nog een paar nootjes aan het achteroverwerken.
Ja,
maar,
dat zagen we. Dat zagen we.
Ja,
precies. Ja.
ik ben nu beschermd, toch? Ik zit niet in het publiek, hè?
Je zit wel het publiek, ja.
Nog steeds? Oké, nee,
Ja.
sorry.
Ja, nee, dat is niet de practice meer. Maar klein Nederlands onder ons, dat mag wel. Hè?
Wow.
We beginnen over 1 minuut. Nou ja, eigenlijk nu trouwens. Het is al 15:15.
Oké.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, let's start. Okay, good afternoon. It's exactly 4:15 now. Let's resume our webinar. I'd like to invite to the stage now a few more people. You already see a new face. Let me introduce him. That's Mark Boekweit from the City of Amsterdam and co-coordinator of the partnership dealing with the integration of migrants and, is it still correct? Migrants and refugees in society? Otherwise you need to correct me. I would like to also to call to the stage Kieran McCarthy from the Committee of the Regions. Kieran is one of the very active supporters of the urban agenda, being involved in his capacity as a member of the Committee of the Region, but also as a rapporteur on the urban agenda in just 2 years ago, I think, if I'm correct. But also some people that have been on the stage already before, like Akon Jentoft and Mark Teplansky. I would like to start now in this round, which will deal with multi-level governance, actually, which is possibly the most innovative aspect of the urban agenda for the EU, the partnerships, the cooperation between member states, European Parliament, and also the cities and European organizations, with this strong support that we know of the European Parliament. So it will be really interesting to focus now on the different achievements of the urban agenda for the EU and its partnership within this context of multi-level governance. Again, thank you very much for suggesting questions in the Q&A. We already collected a few. We'll come back to that after a few quick questions with the panelists, and then we have an open debate where we would like to encourage you also to participate by sending in questions. So there is really this possibility. I would like to start now indeed. Again, we have a lot of videos today. We have another video which was prepared by this partnership on inclusion. After the video, I would like to ask Mark Boekweit to share his view on cooperation, let's say multi-level cooperation within the perspective of his own partnership. But we will first start with a short video, and I would like to ask my colleagues to start that video now. So please, colleagues. Do we have the video ready? Okay, I see people are starting up the video, and here it goes.
So we spent a large amount of time in the first 2 years of the partnership to listen to cities and try to understand what they missed. And what we realized is that there was a clear need for exchanging more on their experiences, on integration, also a place where they could discuss openly about the problems they're facing and find solutions together. The Urban Academy is a 2-day training organized for practitioners and policymakers, both from the local and the national level. And it is organized as a mixture of expert sessions, peer reviews and peer work. There is also a part which is a field visit, so a visit to a city, and we usually cover 2 specific areas of integration. This year was education and working with the civil society, and we are now thinking about the topics for the next year. We have cities in Europe which have a long experience with integration, cities that are completely new to this topic, that have just started. So there is really the space there for transferring knowledge from one city to the other. You can maybe hear from a city with a completely different approach than what you have.
Groups came together, pondering about different questions that everyone chose and then finding common solutions on the premise of examples that come from specific cities. And then, of course, there was the field trip, where we ventured out into Mechelen and looked at 2 different projects. And I think that was the more enriching part for everyone, because we actually met designers of the projects as well as participants who could just share their everyday experiences. There's a lot of discussions that happen on a macro level, but I think the Urban Academy really enabled people from the ground perspective to come together, and to meet each other and to face each other's challenges and realize that there's commonalities between the things that happen in different cities.
So the idea is to have the Academy once per year, but we also would like to create a community of peers, so all the participants of the Academy can continue to exchange also afterwards, continue to find common solutions for problems, ask each other for help if they need to, and so it should not finish in the 2 days, but should also continue afterwards.
Okay, so it should also continue afterwards. Mark, perhaps can you tell us indeed a bit how this whole idea of multi-level cooperation actually functioned within your partnership? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mart. Thank you for inviting me to this session. No, very happy to share that from the perspective of the partnership on the inclusion of migrants and refugees, as we are officially known. So the partnership is I think has been quite successful in bringing actually together the experts or representatives from different levels of governance, as is the constitution of the urban agenda. I think what we managed to do is develop over time a network of people who have never been really together, because the different spheres of working in a European context are quite separated. The network of national contacts that DG Home had established had never really been sort of involved and connected to a network of European cities working actually on the same issues on migration and integration, as well as maybe different services of the Commission. We're not like in a logical way or in a natural way connected together on that issue also, I must say, I think. And then we have some NGOs or knowledge institutions. So I think the whole framework, the whole idea of the urban agenda, as it was originally developed from the member state level, proved in our partnership to be actually really the right way to go, and in such a way that we are still very much alive. We just established a new sort of period for 2 years where we will work on a new action plan, a new agenda on actions. We will have this meeting, the first meeting in the end of October, where we'll discuss new possible actions of the partnership. And so that proves in itself that was kind of nearly a unilateral decision to continue working. And we even have our own, we are kind of an adult or mature partnership in the sense that we have our own secretariat even to assist and facilitate us. So the Urban Academy, or the academy that is now called the Academy on Integration Strategies, was one of the actions that was really quite successful. We have others also. In itself, the program proves that multi-level governance can be very effective and fruitful if you share an agenda that is recognized.
And Mike, we talked a lot about, let's say, the innovative approach of the urban agenda. I mean, now you represent a city, and what's often said is that the urban agenda, for the first time, actually offers also cities, I mean, a direct seat at the table with the member states and European Commission. Can you tell us also a bit, shortly, how that actually helped you as a city in, I think, having a bigger impact at the EU level?
Well, I always like to say that the partnership also offers the European Commission and member states a seat at the table with us European cities. So, no, in a way, let me give an example. The issue of children in migration is clearly a very cross-border European urgent issue where we see that the whole network, the whole safety net in Europe is not functioning right. We have high numbers of children going missing every year across the continent, and they end up often in cities, and so it's a multi-level concern, and it was easily recognized by all partners in our partnership that we should do something on that, or that we should take stock of what is happening out there. We're not the only stakeholder in that, we're not the only player in that, but we took good note of other NGOs and other stakeholders that are working on that, and then we added our own recommendations on how we can better protect these children. And this is not something that is easily solved. And so we will continue working on that in the coming 2 years. But that was really quite I would say, easy. And then the other more sort of, complex issue that I can take as an example was we actually developed a paper of recommendations on how EU funding can be better tailored to the needs of cities, and that took quite a bit of discussion, but we finally got a pretty good set of recommendations that went out to the Commission and the Parliament that included also the position of the member states in our partnership. So we were like a trilogue in itself in a way, and but we managed to do that.
Okay, that's wonderful. Now I would like to, thank you very much for that, Mark. And it's also good to correct me when I said that it offers the cities opportunity to be at the same table with the Commission, but it's also it also works the other way around. And I saw that Akon very much liked that remark indeed. But with that, I would like to go to Kieran McCarthy, who is has been also the rapporteur within the Committee of the Regions on the Urban Agenda for the EU. So Kieran, well, we know each other for years already. You've been so much involved in the Urban Agenda. I would like to ask you, knowing that the multi-level partnership approach has been seen by many. It has been also confirmed by the assessment that Marek Teplonsky also referred to on the Urban Agenda as the, let's say, one of the most innovative aspects of the Urban Agenda. But we need to look ahead also. We're now looking at the new phase of the Urban Agenda. Where do you see room for improvement? Looking at focusing more specifically at this multi-level governance cooperation aspect of the Urban Agenda partnership.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Good afternoon to everybody. That's a big question. I mean, I think we need to keep doing what we're doing anyway. I think it is working. I mean, I think between all of us, we've been lobbying hard at different levels of governance and government to make sure that the EU Urban Agenda actually works. And there, I think I personally feel we're only about halfway through the EU Urban Agenda program. I think we have the action plans in place, but we need to put some sort of targeted funding in place to make sure that the actions actually are carried out, and that the 14 action plans I suppose, become animated. We breathe life into them. I know some of them are doing really well, and some just need help. And I think there's an onus on all of us to provide that help and to try to bring someone on the right track. I think the great thing with the EU Urban Agenda is that it tested the code of partnership and cohesion policy. It expanded its borders. So now we need to keep expanding those borders. And we can't just go back to square one. Like we're at point, whatever, square number 50. Like we need to keep moving. And I do think that the 8%, I think that's proposed at the moment for urban sustainable development, and that's part of the ERDF. I think that's most welcome. I think a lot of us were actually campaigning for that and lobbying for that. And I was like, great, we actually achieved that. Somebody actually was listening, and we actually achieved the 8%. I know we can argue that we need more. It should have been 10% and more. But at least between all of us and DG Regio, I think we've achieved something very special there. I also am a firm believer that there are other EU projects like URBACT, Interreg. There are societal projects within Horizon 2020, which is now going to be Horizon Europe. There's the Urban Innovative Actions. I think they all need to be more aligned. There's part of me that see them all kind of very siloed. Even though when you meet the respective coordinators of all of those, they've all met each other. But sometimes I feel when I'm speaking in the Committee of the Regions, I find that they're disparate. So, and the last thing is like that we don't take these partnerships for granted. We have to keep communicating with each other. We have to keep doing events like this. We have to keep actually moving. I just came off a call. The Committee of the Regions is meeting Angela Merkel today, and I made sure that I mentioned the Leipzig Charter and the EU Urban Agenda. And that was my minute worth, and I kicked that ball into the field. And in fairness, she came back with a response on the Leipzig Charter and the EU Urban Agenda, and it's to keep moving. I mean, last year I was lucky. I was at the Bucharest Declaration on all things urban, and I found many of the member states like they were looking at the document going, that seems fine to us. That's grand. Why are we? In one sense, why are we here? That seems fine. But I think that it was good for them to be there to see and to hear about the work of the partnerships. So there are 4 or 5 things I'd like to see done. And as I say, there's an onus on all of us to keep the ball moving and to have more of these events. I mean, I do realize, I mean, what's great, Mark, I think this is my 3rd or 4th debate with you this year virtually. And that's a good example of we just keep moving. We keep moving, that all of us stay together. And we're going to be virtual like this for the next 6 or 7 months or more, unfortunately. And also, when we were putting together the Leipzig Charter, the debate was fantastic in the room. Like we went from whatever draft number 1 to draft number 5 or 6. And I think that journey was warranted. It was great to see the passion in the room, and we don't need to take that passion for granted. We need to just drive it. And we saw the passion as well in the breakout sessions in Porto in January, a time when we actually had airplanes and airports and things like that. So there's loads of things there that we just need to keep moving on.
We certainly need to do that, yeah. But actually, that brings me to a question which was also suggested by one of the attendees. And let me move to that, now also opening this more interactive part of the webinar. I saw a question by Peter Austin, which quite relates also to what you just said, Kieran, and perhaps you could even answer that one. He wrote, continuing existing and maybe establishing new urban agenda partnerships seems to have a wide support. The action plan still needs implementation, and some new ideas can be developed. What are the critical factors to make this succeed, and how can they keep or even increase the level of energy and enthusiasm that we have seen today? Any thoughts from your side, Kieran, on how to keep this level of energy high and how to keep the momentum up, actually?
People need to see their action plans being implemented. I think that's highly important. If they sit on a shelf, I think people will just get disillusioned, and the architecture of the urban agenda could actually potentially collapse. But I haven't seen that danger or threat yet from many of the coordinators. So I mean, that's why it's good that there's 8% there for urban sustainable development. I do have slight concerns that the urban innovative actions is really for highbrow urban projects. I'd like to see more funding going into some of the smaller projects that aren't highbrow, that just to give people a chance. But that's just a personal perspective. That's not taking apart the urban innovative action people who have done fantastic work and continue to do fantastic work. But I mean, I've gone through most of the action plans, and I've actually used them in my own city council chamber. I've stood up and went, here's what the air quality partnership did. And I was giving a speech representing my mayor recently, and I did something on the energy partnership, and I introduced their work. And I said, this is what's happening at EU level. So yeah, funding, and I know that we need to do some more work on regulation. I think the knowledge exchange element is really good. The funding, we're getting there. In terms of affecting policy, that needs a lot of work. I'd like to see a lot more cross DG work. I think we hear the strong voice of DG Regio more, but maybe not the rest of the DGs. And I think that's a problem as well, actually, with the Committee of the Regions. We hear a lot on regional development in DG Regio, but we don't hear as much from some of the other DGs. So we need to get other DGs involved. Maybe the DG Regio will have an opinion on that. I see Thomas is on this call.
Yeah, we also have Marek Teplansky with us. Marek, if you are there, perhaps you could answer that question also. If not, okay, then.
Yeah.
Oh, that's you. Okay, perfect. Yeah, you're still there.
No, I'm there.
Yeah.
I don't need to
Wonderful.
be. Let me see. I don't need to be too long on that one. I mean, from our side, obviously the multi-level governance and the working together in this context is important. I mean, we see an important linkages and parallels with what we have in the cohesion policy. I mean, as such, as a principle of involvement in different layers and levels, and obviously now with the strengthened window for sustainable urban development, as it was already mentioned, it will play even more important role. Now, when discussing, where or whether we are fine, for example, what Kieran was mentioning, or how well we are on the funding side, how well we are, or relatively well on the knowledge side, I think that for that, and the assessment was confirming, we still see that there is indeed work to do. I mean, it's one thing that we have certain actions and work streams which were defined well. But what we are looking for, and this is where I bring the parallels with the cohesion policy. I mean, it's not enough to have the umbrella or the setting in which this is happening, but actually to get the effects on the ground, and on a way to get the all the levels engaged and come to very concrete impacts in the defined settings in the city, in urban areas where we would like to make change with the funding, not only in terms of the investments, but also with the knowledge which we would like to bring there to increase the capacities and also awareness that there are perhaps certain dimensions which are not necessarily taken into account simply because they are where we are in a certain isolation. So that is what we are looking for also with the EUI, that we try to integrate different elements, be it the urban agenda, the sustainable urban development as we see it in Leipzig, aligning with the same principles in the cohesion policy, and reaching out to the stakeholders and bring the knowledge, the most needed funding and the quality investments to the ground, and that applies also to cooperation on the better regulation, where, as I said, indeed we will need to look into what are the most viable connections to the existing setting, so that we have the proper impact.
Yeah, thank you, Marek. I would also like to involve the attendees to this webinar, and by doing so, I would like to launch a quick poll to see with you how it functions. The first question is actually, well, it's a bit related to the situation that we're in today. Many of us are indeed working from home or elsewhere. Let me just quickly launch this first poll, and then I'll come with two questions in relation to the urban agenda. The first one is actually more to see how it functions, but it would still be interesting to hear from you also where you are working from today. So I'll launch the poll and I'll give you 30 seconds to answer that poll. And this is a really easy question. Oh, I see. Oh, you can even do it. You're so fast. I mean, that's wonderful. We can do it indeed very quick. I'll wait 2 more seconds, and I see that almost every one of you has voted already. And let me quickly share the results with you. Well, I think I'm not the only one working from home. I see 80% of the attendees are now actually working from home. and only 2 people are working from their offices, and no one is working from somewhere else. So that is that's a very clear indication of where we are today. This was the test poll. I would now like to launch another poll with another question, which is actually about looking back on the urban agenda. We already mentioned a bit the assessment of the urban agenda that was commissioned by the European Commission. We also would like to hear or to see your view on the most positive outcome of the urban agenda for the EU, looking back. And then we have another question, which I will also launch quickly after this one, about how it could be improved in the near future. I'll give you, let's say, 20 seconds to answer the next poll. Here we go. So what has been the most positive outcome? Is it enhanced multi-level and stakeholder approach, implemented action and tangible results, the bottom-up approach and involvement of cities, the strengthened urban dimension in EU policies, or the strengthened urban dimension in national policies? Okay, I see that practically everyone has voted now. Okay, I will end the poll. And I will immediately share the results with all of you. So let's have a look. What do we see? Indeed, the enhanced multi-level and multi-stakeholder approach is seen by 1/3 as the most positive outcome, but with the same, let's say, result for the bottom-up approach and almost practically the same for the strengthened urban dimension. To a lesser extent, the implemented actions and tangible results. That's interesting. And the same also for the urban dimension in national policies. So indeed, that also brings us, I would say, to our third poll, which is actually about looking forward. And here the question actually is, which priorities should the multi-level partnership approach focus on post 2020? In other words, in this upcoming programming period. I will launch the poll now, and I will read also the questions for you. So, which priorities should the multi-level partnership approach focus on post 2020? Should it be on the continuation of the existing partnerships, on the creation of new partnerships, new thematic partnerships, more diverse delivery modes, like flexible partnerships, for instance, on current matters, existing partnerships on cross-cutting issues? Or should it be on less experimental and a more standardized approach? Let me wait for, really, it's a bit more difficult to answer that question. I see that you need perhaps a bit more time. I'll wait for another 10 seconds. All right, I'll end the poll now. If I share the results with you immediately, what do we see? What we see is that the majority is actually in favor of more diverse modes of for instance, more flexible partnership on current matters. But there's also some interest, support of a spread, let's say, landscape. Enhanced cooperation between partnership on cross-cutting themes is also seen as important. And apparently few people are also interested in the continuation of the existing ones and the creation of the new partnerships. So indeed, there is room apparently, or there is an interest, at least among some of the attendees, on different modes of the partnerships. That actually brings me also to the issue of ownership, actually, that was mentioned already by Jan Olbrecht in his welcoming address. I would like to ask the panel, and please give me a sign if you want to take the floor to answer that question. who of you would have a suggestion about, let's say, strengthening this idea of ownership of the urban agenda, which was a point that Jan very clearly made in his video address. So when he said what we need to do, the ownership of the urban agenda is one of the weaker points of the first generation of the urban agenda partnerships. So what should be done to improve this idea of ownership of the urban agenda? Who would like to answer that question? Is it you, Mark? Okay, please go ahead. Take the floor. Just need
Thank
to
you,
unmute.
Mark.
Yeah.
It's a very important question, I think. The urban agenda has a peculiar characteristics given its history. It has been pushed and driven from the member states onwards, one could say, in its history. And indeed, it is formally, I think, an intergovernmental agreement. But at the same time, the important target is related to EU agenda stuff, like regulations, better use of financial instruments, the whole knowledge strand. And so I think the ownership question really, for me, is in a large part a question of how can we establish a better ownership from the EU institutions on the urban agenda. And that is something. I mean, the whole program is not an official program in the work program of the European Commission, and as such, it has not been given that responsibility or that profile. And I understand the hesitancy, because has the EU competence in urban affairs? Okay, but that's a very legalistic approach to what is actually on the ground, which is that we all work on the different levels to the same big urban European challenges. So we should go beyond that legalistic approach. I think there's nothing wrong with bringing stakeholders together on a commonly agreed agenda. That will be my view on that.
Yeah. Do you also see a specific role for yourself as a coordinator of a partnership in, for instance, promoting the urban agenda, and in some sort of a role as a ambassador of the urban agenda? How do you see that? And the same question could also be asked to Akon, of course, representing also a partnership.
It appeals a lot to me to be an ambassador. That sounds that sounds like an enrichment to my private and professional life. But no, for sure, I believe in the instrument, for sure. I guess the example of the partnership on inclusion is maybe a good example, because here we have from the beginning convinced the relevant DG service, DG Home, to become co-coordinator of the partnership from the first step. And then in itself there we had already on that side full commitment, and which is really, I think, for a large part explaining on how we keep our partnership relevant and active and involved. So yes, I would like to be the ambassador of such an instrument.
I also saw that Hakon also raised his hand. Hakon, you also want to share some thoughts with us. Please go ahead.
Yes, because I think this is I will follow up on what Mark said. That this is like the three. The chair with three I don't remember the legs of the chair that has been now extended with the fourth leg, the local level, and in one way this chair and how that instrument should be governed should be by all the partners that are in the urban agenda. So but at the same time, we need to be connected to the EU policy processes by the Commission, by the member states, and by the presidency. So there is still, we need to be linked to that, and we will strongly, and also to the DG Regio and the way they have done it. But I think the city should have a bit more, how to say, governing role in this as well, to secure that this fourth leg actually will be heard and be a part of the development of the urban agenda partnerships and that way of working. So to me, it's both to go on with what you have created, not going back, as Kieran said, but develop it the other way, but make it a little bit more streamlined and make sure that also the cities have a possibility to have an influence on where we are going for the next period and the next step for the urban agenda partnerships. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Akon. Is it you, Kieran, also want to take the floor? Yes, please.
I mean, I want to agree with Haakon. I mean, there is a roadmap there now as part of the Leipzig Charter. So let's take that road. I mean, we spent several months together going through that. I think I came in on the Leipzig Charter in April or May last year. So here we are 15, 16 months later. And I think there's a roadmap there, plus the critique that DG Regio did that was presented in January in Porto at the Cities Forum. So we've got plenty of information on directional signs where to go. I think somewhere in the next few weeks, we probably need to meet up the various coordinators and various people involved and see where we go. But certainly I want to see some of the actions scale up. I don't want the reports, the action plans sitting on a shelf. I want to see, okay, what are we doing with them? Because people will just walk away from the table, and that would be an awful shame.
Yeah, sure. I'm also looking now at some of the other questions that came in by the attendees. Agnieszka Jarcewicz asked another interesting question, which does relate to also to the different spatial skills that we already touched upon earlier in the discussion. She asked, her question actually is, can it be expected that concrete measures for incentivizing capitals or metropolises to become open to cooperation and to cooperate with small and medium-sized cities and towns will be introduced to a value-based better regulation? That might sound like a difficult question, but I would like to ask if there's anyone of you in the panel that would like to respond to that question. So how the cities of different sizes could actually bring in extra value to better regulation. If it is too complex, we'll find a different way to answer that question later.
That's a very complex question.
It is quite a complex question, I admit, that's true.
But I do think that the urban sustainable development will give small cities a chance to get funding for what they actually need. So for example, my city in Cork in the south of Ireland has drawn down 2 tranches of that funding, one for a bridge and one for a new public park. And so these are down to earth projects. And many of the partnerships, the actions in the partnerships and the strategies, the action plans are very down to earth and just need a small bit of funding to get them going and to scale them up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Karen, you want to respond to that? Sorry.
Yeah. I was wondering, I mean, there was a combination made between small and medium-sized cities and better regulation, but I would just actually answer the question more broader. I think it's very important to have small and medium-sized cities involved. The question is how, because often they have less capacity, so they need us, they need the partnerships, they need all the parties involved to gain the knowledge of these partnerships, of these actions. And how do you do this? I think in every country this could be different. Could be a different way. I think maybe also Marek has ideas about how you could do this. But in general, in the Netherlands, for example, I would just give a Dutch example. I could give others, but for the Dutch is just easier. And for now, I had asked explicitly our organization for municipalities to fulfill a role in this issue. I'd asked them because they have different types of networks with different types of cities, if they could actually fulfill such a role to disseminate more the actions and the knowledge that is done in the different partnerships toward these smaller, medium-sized cities, to outreach and broaden the knowledge, for example. So this could also maybe work in other countries if you have these type of organizations or other types of knowledge centers that could do this, because it will need some support. It will need some extra support.
I'd say even an EU funding officer, policy officer in councils, and there's a role there as well for the managing authorities of the funds. I'm lucky in my city, we've got a very active EU funding officer, policy officer, who's constantly searching for backed Interreg projects, any funding that's actually out there, and projects that we can get involved with and actually enjoy and share knowledge with. I think in the last 2 or 3 years, we've done 20, between Urbact and Interreg, maybe 20 projects. And it's been difficult actually to get some of our directors of services within our council involved, because some of them didn't know about EU Urban Agenda or anything like that. So we have to kind of start from scratch and kind of bring people along. But yeah.
Yeah, Marek, I'd like to give you the floor too. You also wanted to say a few things, so please share your thoughts with us. You need to unmute first, sorry.
You'll unmute. Okay, very good. Yeah, I just wanted to react a bit on how we can, for example, bring the smaller cities in, and also how to improve the workings of all strands. I mean, there is a thread throughout the discussion. I would say that we will have to, on the way, accept that there is not a magic solution, that this will change from one day to another. There is not a silver bullet which would then help it, and we say, okay, well, with this, everything will now change. And we will be working in a completely different environment. On the other hand, what we can do with the gradual steps, and all of us acting it at the different levels, I mean, be it the Commission, be it the local authorities, be it the member states, and now I'm looking at what we have in common, and what we would like to see, indeed more or strengthened, is the quality of the partnerships, of working together, and the urban agenda really brought, and if not validated anything, then definitely validated the value of multi-level governance, on working together across institutional, territorial, and national borders. And I think that this is what we have to keep.
Oh, that's a pity. There we lost Marek for a second. No, it doesn't come back that quickly. That perhaps is a signal also that it's about time to close this meeting. Karen, and perhaps I should give you the floor now to share some of your thoughts with us about the takeaway messages from the discussions that we had in this webinar. As the Urban Envoy, I mean, you focused a lot indeed on also on better regulation, but you also work very closely with the current trio presidency. Well, I mean, how do you see indeed the next steps of the further let's say possibilities for strengthening actually the urban agenda? What you said in your own speech actually, that we need to make it stronger. I wrote it down: stronger, more concrete, and more practical. So what would be, let's say, the roadmap between Leipzig, which is already end of next month, leading all the way to via Lisbon to Ljubljana?
Actually, I heard a lot of things that were that have been I think have strengthened the certain views that I've heard before. There's if I would just go through the different blocks of today, I think in general the experiment, as we might call it, or the innovation, is growing up. It's halfway, as Kieran said. We have to keep moving. I wrote up next level, strengthening. It's all about, well, like I said, concrete, pragmatic, as Jan would say, and stronger. And within this whole frame, ownership was mentioned, financing and commitment, but the multi-level way of working and also the partnerships were the most important mode of transport, let's say, for the urban agenda, if we keep it with cars and buses and everything and movement. So the partnerships, to become more effective, I think it was mentioned that you need a common agenda. You also need to, they are the core, you need to broaden the outreach. We've talked about small and medium-sized cities. We talked about more implementation of the actions to keep it moving ahead, more participation of other DGs, but also the link with EU policy is a very important one. Those are things that I will be, expressing more strongly, I think, in my interventions. At this point, I think there's many interventions to be made, but I think these are very important. If you look at the better regulation, for example, I heard that, well, the initiative, thank you, is being supported. Well, that's nice, but much of the work actually is done in the partnerships. And we need to be persistent. We need to be, there's a lot of elbow grease going in this, a lot of work, a lot of courage was mentioned by Michaela. But the support and I think the expertise that is needed from the very beginning was, I think, one of the clear messages in this one. You need to increase the quality. We need to increase also the support and the expertise. And the impact will also improve. And also the impact we can have within the policy cycle, within the Fit for Future platform and furthermore. So I think that's one of the very clear ones for the better regulation. I think also it was mentioned by Marek that it's something we do together. How we all contribute. We all have ownership. We all have a voice. We all have the possibility to influence. So sometimes you need to use, you are in front of the troops and you need to buy time and find the right moment and the chance. I think Michaela said that too. Sometimes there is just a chance and a moment and you must grab this. It is, however, topical. It's now the new programming period has started for the Commission. It is even more important that we, the implementation of the actions is taken on, and also the better regulation action. It is also interesting, even though it was not tabled, better knowledge was very much talked about. Better funding, not so much. So maybe that's something we should spend more attention on, because better knowledge and better regulation got a lot of attention. And better knowledge, there was a lot of, there was a very clear message also from Alexandra, you need good data to have better knowledge. And data is sometimes, numbers and figures, but it's also experience. It's also, it's daily experience, it's better practices, it's sharing of these practices between cities, European institutions, stakeholders. So I think that's for the better knowledge, very important. And interesting, when we came to the green, that's one of our themes, we came to the green topic. There, it was quite clear that procurement makes a difference. Procurement, you can make a difference by procurement. And the conditions for green should be right. So you should have, the regulations should be working for you. Also your knowledge, like we said, knowledge and data should be working for you. There should be the right incentives there. And the paradigm shift, the paradigm shift from working from silos, water, waste, air, I think was mentioned by Fabienne. But we have to look more integral and more toward urban factors. And I think the same applies if you look at partnerships and you look at themes. I think our next step is actually, and one of the answers to the poll was more diversification. But I think one of the ways forward is actually to combine themes and combine the work of certain partnerships to move forward. And maybe those will create new partnerships. But I think the integration of different themes is, and the complexity of what's happening in the cities now needs such a next step. So I would say beyond thematic approach, as Alexandra also mentioned, and if I then look at what Jan mentioned, very much this year, we have spent a lot of time working on evaluations. I think Kieran said the same. He said we've spent months working on evaluations, on declarations, but now is the time, if I say what's the answer between what is going to happen between Leipzig and Ljubljana, now is the time to become concrete. Now is the time to keep the urban agenda alive, the partnerships alive, stop debating, remain actually and have the real drivers for sustainable urban development on the ground. Take this responsibility with all the parties, move ahead, tackle questions like partnerships, finance, ownership, and just do it. Go for it and take the next step. And hopefully, at least that would be my biggest point, is that in Ljubljana we have this concrete working of the strengthening of the urban agenda, and hopefully in the meantime there are obviously already partnerships, and the multi-level governance is something that just might not just only work here, but it could work in many areas within the European policy. And that's also what I hope, is that this way of working actually will have like an oil spill, will spread throughout other European ways and themes and policy. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Karen. Yeah, just do it. I mean, that sounds like a wonderful summary of what we discussed this afternoon. Just make it happen, indeed, and make it as concrete as possible. I think this is a big challenge for all of us involved in the urban agenda. I would like to thank you, Karen, on behalf also, representing the Dutch Ministry of the Interior and Kingdom Relations, the Urban Intergroup also as the co-organizer of this official European Week of Regions and Cities event. But I would also like to thank all the panelists, all the guests, and the colleagues who've made this event possible happen. We planned it differently, as we said in the beginning. The webinar is not the most ideal setting, of course, but what we will do is we'll share all the information, let's say, exchange during this webinar with the panelists. Also, you'll receive follow-up mails from our side, and we will also ask you to share some thoughts with us about the future of the partnerships, whether you have any ideas about future thematic partnerships or combined partnerships, as has been mentioned. Also, that will provide input also to the next steps. There will be more meetings, probably on a short notice. Virtual meetings again. So Karen will meet probably again in one of those virtual meetings soon to discuss let's say the next development of the urban agenda. And we'll stay in close touch with all the coordinators of different partnerships. So thank you, all of you, for participating in this event. What I said, we'll stay in touch with you. You'll receive some more information from our side. Thank you very much to all colleagues also for providing support.
Mart, let me interrupt you, because I think I need to also thank you as helping us organize this very much, because nobody else will say, I have to say, thank you very much for helping us organize this. And well, I think most of us will meet each other soon. So
yeah, well, you saw the pictures of some of my colleagues who have been very active also behind the scenes. And I would like to thank on my behalf also going from left to right on my screen, Lily, Livia, and Leah, who has been also very active in providing the support. So I think now we thank everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and we will be back soon. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.